the wonderful Alix Dobkin. This book is about a memoir of growing up communist, coming onto the Greenwich Village folk scene, and coming out in the feminist movement. I went to the Tyler School of Fine Arts and met my first lesbians, and this is what that's about. And I was in the party. I joined when I was 16, by the way, and stayed for 6 years. 6 years is the longest relationship I've ever had with anybody except my daughter. So 6 years with the party. And I quit when I came to New York after a while. I quit the party and became totally involved in the folk scene. But this precedes this. This is before I go to New York. It's called Louise and Lesbians. My very first lesbian friend was Louise Fishman. Has anybody ever heard of her? She's a wonderful painter, quite well known. Okay. Apparently not that well known. A slim, fair-haired, curly-headed senior who radiated a compelling aura. Her air of purpose intrigued me, and I was drawn to her handsome features, her wary, wired energy. A gifted, serious painter with a wacky light side, her thoughtful face might instantly break into sharp bursts of laughter. She came into my life around the same time as Nancy, who I had a very passionate relationship with in college, but we were never lesbians. See, I was a communist and a Jew. It was enough. I mean, really, truly, that's how I thought of it. My parents were taken with her authenticity, her intelligence, and good heart. They admired her work. I paint my inner landscape, she said, about the tormented bones and flowers, still lifes reminiscent of Rouault and Soutine. Dedicating herself to her dark, solemn canvases, she was on her way to non-figurative abstract expressionism. Louise was the first one I knew to learn the twist, and I loved watching her dance. We enjoyed hanging out together, going to museums and exhibitions. She got us appointments to view the mostly private Barnes Foundation on the main line. Luminaries such as T.S. Eliot, James Michener, and Le Corbusier were turned away by Alfred Barnes for reasons he alone understood. After 10 years in the courts, the Philadelphia Inquirer finally compelled the foundation governing the arguably greatest private art collection in America to admit the public 2 days a week. Once inside, Louise would discreetly direct my gaze to Violetta Damasia. Anybody ever heard of her? You did, okay. When she appeared, her pale face decked with tinted glasses topped off by a halo of wild red hair. Rings flashing and gossamer dress billowing behind her, Violetta was European, a teacher, a character, and a fixture. 30 years Alfred's junior and his reputed mistress, she had been named perennial director in his will and was frequently seen navigating the art world of masterpieces cramming the walls in a millennia of Western European art. Louise and I didn't lack for conversation and discussed Violetta, the collection, theories of art, school, our families, and her parents' fearful attitudes toward her lesbianism. She was my introduction to the Philadelphia lesbian bar scene, which was both attractive and unsavory. In her presence, I felt confident and strong, partly because of my heterosexual superiority complex, but mostly because she herself was tough and grounded. I trusted her, cared about her, worried about her. She was always having woman trouble. After my relationship with Nancy ended, I told Louise that we had been lovers. She was surprised. I didn't think you had the guts to actually do anything, she said. Of course, we hadn't done that much. On the other hand, many years after I had come out, Louise heard me mention having been straight and remarked, "You were never straight, Alex." Maybe not, but I was certainly nothing like that crowd of women with whom Louise hung out. Their world seemed gray, shadowy, and wounded. A world where saloons provided common ground and alcohol was currency. Finding a multitude of differences between me and lesbians, I was grateful for the discomfort I experienced. Some of the women looked so rough and mannish, not attractive at all, I thought to myself, seizing on dissimilarities. It was my psychic shield, and I polished it vigilantly. Through my friendship with Louise, I became acquainted with a scene encompassing some of Philadelphia's most diverting mavericks and misfits. I liked to tag along with her to lesbian parties, feeling both thrilled and strangely disconnected from the sad, chaotic, crisis-ridden lives I perceived around me. Like communists, lesbians were outcasts. but these women fell even lower on the social scale, carrying secrets deeper and more intimate than ours. Communists might be jailed for what we believe, but lesbians were a target because of who they were. My heterosexual privilege protected me. On the other hand, I felt lucky to be allowed entree into Louise's lesbian social circle and to share in their freedom and bawdy, rowdy fun, their ease with each other, and edgy, often sexually laced humor. After Louise, my favorite lesbian was Mike. Her humor entertained me and her playful flirtation flattered me. She's also an amazing artist. Louise had met Mike downtown at the museum school, now the Philadelphia College of Art, where Louise had studied before transferring to Tyler. They loved each other, and all had gone well until Louise was betrayed by a counselor who reported the romance to Louise's mother, who in turn panicked, locked her daughter in her room, and threatened to have Mike arrested. Mike's parents weren't much better. Their own families, I realized, had proven more dangerous to these girls than the FBI ever had to me. Their lives could be disrupted and ruined at any moment. Police raids on bars were frequent, and they could be arrested and find their name and address in the morning paper. Outside, they might be beaten up or killed. There was no safety for lesbians anywhere. From time to time, I joined them for coffee at Dave's Deli on Spruce, the Harvey House on Broad, or the Oak Lane Diner back when it was open all night. A handful of downtown art students and other young lesbians bonded into a fierce drama-prone band who partied and sometimes vacationed together, successively loving then betraying, cherishing and abusing one another in racking succession. Decades later, Mike recalled their crowd, quote, "We loved each other, but we had such a terrible time with each other. We were cruel one minute, loving the next, and we were bed-hopping the entire time." It led to a lot of anxiety, a lot of sadness, and sometimes physical confrontation. It was a teenage thing, but in our day, you couldn't suffer out loud. We suffered together. We built our own family, and it was the only family we could suffer with. This family celebrated the holidays and birthdays, frequenting clubs like Pepe's and the Blue Note, where they'd go to see Nina Simone, or a famous Philly native, Billie Holiday. When Billie died in 1959, they took it hard, meeting together and mourning as a family would. Nina Simone's music was familiar to me, but Louise first got me to listen to Billie, the tragic icon who touched this hard-boiled, volatile community of lesbians the way Judy Garland affected their gay brothers. Both boys and girls flocked to see Jerry Southern, another popular entertainer who performed her playful routines on the homosexual club circuit of the day. Frances Faye records can be found in the collection of every gay man in Philadelphia. She wore heavy pancake makeup and, Mike recounted, looked like John Wayne in drag with a voice that could flatten the redwoods. Lesbian culture fascinated me, highly seasoned as it was with worldly in-jokes, codes, and bawdy wisecracks. No party was complete without a tale of local characters like Little Gin or Big Gin, who was so drunk one night that she sailed over the top of a car on her Harley and tore up her leg, which is why she limped, laughing about it afterwards. These women laughed, always on the edge, always at risk. Mike described another mythic lesbian character, a big, tough Italian bleached blonde named Rusty, who slicked her hair back in the customary butch ducktail. Rusty ran the infamous bar bearing her name, but actually belonging to the mob. From Mike, I learned that during that time, a mysterious series of Center City fires ravaged Philadelphia lesbian and gay bars, and Rusty was burned out more than once at more than one location. At the top of the stairway, it was on top of a restaurant, and at the top of the stairway, you were stopped by Dee, a very, very tough dyke. Good, this is Mike talking, by the way. Very good looking, but very nasty, with the typical DA haircut, white t-shirt, rolled up sleeves, and the cigarettes were in there. Like black chinos and penny loafers. And she made it very hard to get in. Dee would scrutinize the IDs with one eye on the bathrooms and would leap up to bang on the door and yell if she saw more than one woman going in. Everyone would turn to see who would come out looking very sheepish, fixing their hair, Mike recalled. You see, women would go there and meet someone. It was instant love and had to be consummated right away. Of course, the men could do whatever they wanted to in their bars. The more the merrier. That Dee was a real tough cookie. So I talk more about the lesbian scene in Philadelphia this was during the end of the 50s.